Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey: Plato Wyngard and the Armour of the Gods. Chapter 25 by Mark and James Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 25. The troop carrier followed the highway north with 3 brown-colored Toyota 4-wheel drives in hot pursuit, small arms fire tearing up the road and the other vehicles around them. "Evasive maneuvers!" Plato yelled, as the vehicle screeched through the traffic. "What do you think I'm doing?" Luther muttered, as he fought with the steering wheel. Plato ignored the comment as he leaned out of the side window and returned fire with his compact assault rifle. The heavy traffic and civilian pedestrians thronging the roads and sidewalks were making the task of effective fire near impossible. Malekai was not under such moral imperatives as his team continued to spray the way ahead with lethal efficiency. Delia and Kylan were now also assisting Plato with his return fire. "We've got trouble!" Luther yelled. Plato let off a couple of bursts, then joined Luther at the front. "What seems to be the prob?" Plato's sentence was cut short as he viewed the road ahead. 20 minutes earlier, a young man driving a truck full of cattle had been too busy watching a pretty young woman walking up the side of the road when he had dropped his cigarette onto his lap. Attempting to put out the burning tip that had proceeded to burn his thigh, he had lost control of his vehicle. The resulting fishtail had sent the rig into oncoming traffic, tipping the trailer on its side and his payload onto the road. The already spooked cattle had taken off in all directions, causing the surrounding traffic to panic and resulting in mass pile-ups and collisions. So now, Plato and Luther were staring ahead at absolute pandemonium. "Get us off the road now!" Plato screamed as the heavy troop carrier thundered towards the gridlock ahead, with Malekai and his death squad following close behind. Luther hadn't really heard Plato's advice, as his mind was trying to think 2 steps ahead. Nearly 200 meters from the chaotic scene ahead, Luther noticed the road was starting to veer east, with a slight incline. Not sure how far the rise dropped on the other side, Luther was all set to gamble. With no other option yet available, he pushed the accelerator to the floor. Plato's expression was one of shock and horror. "Have you lost your mind? What the hell are you doing?" Plato yelled. "What I do best," Luther muttered. "That would be flying, and I don't see how that helps us." Plato's voice trailed off as he understood the plan. "Hold tight back there." Kylan and Delia stopped their firing, had a brief moment to realize what was about to happen, then held on for dear life. With the Pinzgauer's speedometer reading close to 130 kilometers an hour, the vehicle hit the highway guardrail, tearing through it like a samurai sword through rice paper. Then, they were airborne. Plato gripped on tight and glanced quickly around the interior. It was as if time had slowed. Everyone inside the vehicle was a seasoned warrior, but in circumstances like this, nothing could prepare them for the outcome. Plato had just enough time to utter the word "shit" when gravity won its battle and the troop carrier hit the ground. Luther held on to the steering wheel for all it was worth, but the gesture was completely futile as their forward momentum was the only thing currently directing their path. They bounced like a rock, skimming across the still water of a pond. Only now there was no flat surface of the road to welcome them, but rather the rapid decline of rock and undulating turf. By the time the vehicle had stopped bouncing, they were doing better than 140 kilometers an hour with almost no ability to steer and their path ahead barred by a rapidly approaching housing area encased with timber fencing. Malekai, who was riding in the lead vehicle directly behind Plato, watched in stunned awe as the pinscour had become aerial. His driver, who had been concentrating on nothing more than getting right up behind the troop carrier, had barely enough time to register what they had planned to do, and at the very last second depressed the brakes for all they were worth. The result had been the locking up of the wheels and a billowing gray cloud of smoke pouring out from the rear axle. The vehicle fishtailed in an attempt to stop, skidded for about 30 meters, striking the highway guardrail and clumsily grinding to a halt, partially hanging over the edge and looking down at the runaway juggernaut that was Plato's troop carrier. The second vehicle was not as lucky. Not having the benefit of a clear view, they had realized too late what Malakai's vehicle had planned. So when the second vehicle hit the brake, it was too late. Then the driver had tried to turn. The worst thing he could have done, for at the speed they were traveling, changing direction was impossible. The driver had lost control and the vehicle flipped as it hit the barrier. Now, traveling sideways, the Toyota was spinning like the blades of a push mower as it careered down the slope, the body breaking apart as it hit the heavy rocks on the hillside. The fuel tanks ruptured, escaping gases ignited as the steel struck rock, causing a thunderous explosion. The third and final vehicle, having the luck of being last, was then able to brake with plenty of warning. "Go there," Plato urged, pointing at what looked like the backyards of the approaching homes. Luther nodded as he wrestled for control, having a small amount of success, though the troop carrier plowed through the flimsy timber fence, its sturdy bull bar easily absorbing the brunt of the impact. For the first time that day, luck had well and truly been on their side, as most families were either at school or work, so as they careered through the backyards, there was no chance of causing a fatality. "Keep going. I can see a small road ahead," Plato said, their speed now something Luther could control. He nodded and continued. Malekai watched in stunned silence as his quarry sped away, before realizing that was the last thing he wanted to happen. He spun on his driver with growing rage. "Don't just sit there like a fool! Catch them, you idiot!" Malekai howled. It was taking all of his self-control not to shoot his driver, who had regained his wits and was now attempting to re-engage in pursuit, albeit at 1/10 of the speed of the troop carrier. They followed the troop carrier down the slope. Plato and his group managed to get clear of the suburban sprawl and make it onto one of the back roads. "We've got a good lead, but they're still following," Delia said, as she peered out of the rear window. "If we get out of this alive, I'll be the one behind the wheel from now on," Plato said with a grin. Luther shook his head in disgust. "I'd rather let not drive," Luther muttered. Plato let out a bark of a laugh, knowing their longtime friend was the worst driver he had ever seen, and that was saying something in Vietnam. "Try to keep heading east. I'm sure there is open ground in that direction. It's a bit late now, but I would rather we stay clear of populated areas if we have to re-engage with Malekai," Plato said. Then, as an afterthought, he turned to the passengers in the back. "While we have the opportunity, let's reload and prepare for that one-eyed son of a bitch." Delia and Kylie nodded and went about rearming. Luther followed Plato's advice and headed east, at the same time taking as many random turns as possible, hoping to lose Malakai's vehicles. After 5 minutes, they did happen upon a large clearing. Luther was unprepared for the sight that greeted them. A stone castle rose on the horizon, surrounded by smaller but equally astonishing stone structures. "Am I seeing this right, or did I take a blow to the head?" Luther asked. They all peered out and were struck with the impressive sight. "Facile Gebi," Delia said, with a satisfied smile. "One of the famed castles of the emperors," Plato said. "I never thought we'd have the opportunity to see it. It's magnificent. Built in the 17th century by the Emperor Fasilides, Facile Gebi was an imposing fortress constructed from stone and rock. Usually a popular tourist destination, the castle was currently undergoing a period of restoration, and as such was vacant. The only thing preventing unwarranted trespassers was a flimsy line of yellow safety tape closing off the western side of the grounds. Under the current circumstances, Luther decided to drive on through and make a beeline for the northeastern side, hoping there was a place he could park the troop carrier and not be seen. Parking the vehicle directly next to a towering wall of the castle, Plato and his team made final preparations for Malekai and his death squad. "Where the hell have they gone?" Malekai asked rhetorically as the two remaining vehicles cruised through the small suburban neighborhood. Knowing that Plato would want to stay clear of the highway north of their position, and that his petty morality would keep them moving away from the built-up area here and the more public areas south, Malekai ordered them east, hoping they would get lucky. After 10 minutes, they too stumbled across the grounds of Facile Gebi. "Pull over near the trees," Malekai ordered. His driver, knowing better than to argue or hesitate, did as he was ordered. They now approached cautiously on foot in an extended line towards the castle. Malekai and 8 members of the Birds of Memnon. Plato watched them draw near with a mixture of admiration and utter annoyance. With all of his faults, in particular his lack of humanity and humility, Malekai was a skilled and determined foe. Despite the fact that he deserved everything he got, he had turned a potentially life-threatening experience, with his former employers now hunting him down, into a positive windfall. Malakai's biggest mistake, though, had been to turn Plato into an enemy, something which Plato couldn't understand. With everything he had going on, why would he take time out to organize the killing of Bian and dozens of other people, potentially getting himself killed or captured? Not to mention knowing he was a wanted man by an organization that had the funding and resources to make him disappear. He could quite easily have gained the power of the Armour, then with his new enhanced abilities gone about eliminating his enemies. Why get Plato involved? It didn't make sense. Not that it mattered now. Luther had definitely got lucky when he had brought them here. With time up their sleeves, they had been able to prepare a welcoming party that would stop Malekai once and for all. Now fully armed, they had taken up positions along the higher vantage points of the castle, and with that advantage, Plato would be a merciless victor. The rest of the team had orders only to engage when they were close enough, something Plato would instigate with an opening volley. Now all team members waited anxiously for Plato to give the signal. Malekai and his men moved with slow, deliberate speed, taking the time to scan the area thoroughly as they went. Just about there, Plato thought as he lined up the former guild member with his rifle's iron sights. Malekai was almost within striking distance, Plato's finger tensing on the trigger, when gunfire erupted to their rear. Luther and Delia were the first to return fire. From his current position, Plato was unable to see who was striking from the rear. And worse still, The distraction had allowed Malekai and his advancing force to take cover. "What have you got?" Plato called out. "Half a dozen BOM soldiers, and you're not going to believe who's leading them," Luther yelled. Before Plato could speak, Luther answered the million-dollar question for him. "That bastard buddy of yours. Thor," Luther cursed. "He's not my friend," Plato growled. "Can you two act like professionals?" Kalen growled. "Don't worry about us. You just make sure you do your part," Luther said, annoyed. The grounds of the old castle were alive with all manner of small arms fire, and despite owning the high ground, Plato and his team had been forced to fight two split forces with minimal numbers. The only one not complaining was Delia, who looked to be relishing the situation. "God damn, they came prepared," Luther said, as he narrowly missed a short burst that ricocheted into the stone wall above. "They're fresh and heavily armed. I wish I had my M60 with me right now," he added wistfully. "Remind me to put that on the list if we ever get out of this alive," Plato replied. At that moment, he had an idea. "Kylan, are you able to climb down from your position and move towards the next tower west?" Plato asked. "I think so. Why?" Kylan asked. "I'm thinking that if you could get to that furthest tower, you could then pull back even further, and with you out of engagement distance of both strike teams, you might be able to flank Thor's team," Plato said. Kylan shook his head slowly. "That's a big gamble on my part," Kylan said. "Yes and no. Understanding our current predicament, and the fact that we're running low on resources means they only need to wait us out," Plato said. "Screw that," Luther said. "Do what the man says." Kylan was about to argue, but the nagging thought in the back of his head was now starting to side with Plato. "Fine, I'll do it. But I'm protesting that I'll be the one who's taking all the risk," Kylan said. "Well, if you're through talking and complaining about it, get moving," Plato said. "Everyone else, let's give this asshole some covering fire." On his command, they were able to lace the grounds with enough rounds that the converging teams were forced to lie low. Plato was able to see Kylan scurry from his position and run towards the west tower. He was hopeful that his plan would work, and the guild member could flank his former SAS colleague. As this was happening, Malakai's team were getting more adventurous, testing the capabilities and range of Luther's and their own defensive abilities. One black-clad assassin proved too slow as he made a dash for cover, only to fall prey to a short burst from Luther, putting him down for good. On Plato's flank, Delia made her presence felt by utilizing skills honed in the mountains with a high-powered rifle. She was able to pick off two members of Thor's team as they tried to climb one of the smaller towers to their rear. Thor cursed as his team was cut nearly in half by the Spartan's descendant. "They're pulling back!" Delia cried in triumph. Plato spun around, knowing full well that Thor hadn't given up. "They're up to something, Delia. Don't let up for a second," Plato warned. Malekai had halted his advance and was now holding firm. His men fired sparingly in Plato's direction. It was hardly heavy, seemingly nothing more than to keep them occupied. Plato's mind raced, trying to get a step ahead of Thor. "They're up to something. Be prepared for anything," Plato warned. Where the hell was Kylan? "Plato!" Luther yelled. "Look!" Plato felt his guts go cold. Malekai was moving closer, but he had a shield protecting him. It was Kylan. "Bloody hell!" Plato swore. Even from this distance, Plato could see Malekai smirking. "We have one of your team, my old friend Kalin," Malekai called out. "What do you want?" Plato asked, but he already knew the answer to this. "I want the map," Malekai demanded. "You were never meant to possess it. Give it to me, and I'll let you go." "Not good enough," Plato said. "I have more men coming as we speak. You'll never be able to hold us off forever. Give me the map, and I'll let you live for now," Malekai said. "If I give you the map—" "No, don't," Luther interrupted. "He's right. We can't hold him off forever," Plato hissed, clearly not happy with the way things were turning out. "If I give you the map, I want Kalin as well," Plato insisted. "I'm afraid that won't be an option," Malekai said as he pulled a knife out and pressed it tight to the guild member's throat, just enough to make it bleed. "Then we have no deal. I'll destroy it." "You do that, and not only will I kill you, but I'll also find your other friends and kill them too. And when I'm done, I'll go back to that little village your sweetheart came from, and I'll wipe her kin from the earth. And don't believe for a second that I won't," Malekai screamed. Plato felt sick. He knew in his heart that the ex-guild member would be true to his sick, perverted word. Looking over at Luther and Delia, both of whom wore his expression of disgust and loathing at being caught in this horrible situation, Plato knew that there was nothing he could do. "How do I know you'll be true to your word?" he asked. "Because, as I said to you earlier, I'm not done with you. I want you to suffer before I kill you. It's not if, but when. I won't touch you now. You and what's left of your team will be free to go," Malekai said with a beaming smile. Plato gave the word, and they laid their weapons down. Only Delia refused to relinquish her short sword, and Malekai, who was surrounded by gun-toting soldiers, didn't seem perturbed by that at all. They exited the castle with raised hands and walked slowly towards Malekai. Then they were made to kneel before him. Kalin was by now cuffed and gagged and going nowhere. Malekai stepped before Plato, wearing the look of someone who knows the game has been won, and all that remains is for the timer to run out. "You don't know how happy it makes me to see the great Plato Wyngard defeated like this," Malekai said. "This isn't over," Plato growled. "Please, petty threats now seem rather boorish, don't you think? Now hand over the map," Malekai ordered. Plato reached into his back pocket. "Slowly. Wouldn't want you to have a change of heart and do something stupid." Plato's jaw tensed, but he refused to give the smug bastard the satisfaction. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out the map. Taking a deep breath, he handed it over to Malekai, who accepted it like a present from a dear relative. "Thank you so much. I assure you that I will put it to good use," Malekai said. And with that, he turned and walked away, his soldiers escorting the bound figure of Kalin with them. The only person who remained behind was Thor. He too was wearing the smile of the victor. "You always thought you were better than everyone else. Not so great now, are you?" Thor said. "I never believed that I was better than anyone else. You just knew that you were less, is all. A big blunt tool." Thor's face grew bitter, and he tensed, as if he were about to strike Plato. "You're lucky. Malekai said you were to be unharmed," Thor warned. "And whatever your master says goes." "Right. You're a good lapdog," Luther taunted. Thor's eyes went wide and he swung his massive arm in a backward swipe, striking Luther in the face. The blow rocked him back, but to his credit he refused to make a sound. only staring back with hate-fueled eyes. He spat a mouthful of blood on the ground before him. "I'll be seeing you again," Luther growled. "I look forward to it," Thor said, as he too turned and walked away. Plato watched Thor and his men leave, and then slowly made his way back to the vehicle. Once they were all inside, Plato regarded Luther and Delia, his face a vision of grim determination. "I swear to you two that we will never be in that position again. I don't know how we will do it, but we'll find them. And when we do, we'll make sure they never hurt anyone ever again." Plato swore. This time it was Delia who surprised him. "Fear not. I know we have lost the map, but I have a certain ability that you may find useful yet," Delia said. "And what's that?" Luther asked. "I have what you would call a photographic memory. I will draw you another map," Delia said. "That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Plato Wyngard and the Armour of the Gods has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.